They were dying, and nobody in the galaxy seemed to care. They were a gentle species. Their bodies glowed with soft blue light like stars trapped beneath skin. For 3,000 years they had lived on Velar 7, a small ocean moon covered in crystal caves and endless water. They were not warriors. They were not traders. They were keepers of memory. Every species in the galaxy had trusted them to preserve their history, their stories, their knowledge. They asked for nothing in return except peace. Now peace was ending. The Dominion swarm had found them. The swarm was a nightmare that moved between stars. They were creatures of hunger, billions of them traveling in massive ships, consuming everything in their path. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They simply took what they wanted and destroyed what remained. The swarm wanted the crystals beneath Velar 7's surface. These crystals were rare and powerful, worth more than entire planets to the right buyer. They had never mined them. They considered the caves sacred, but the swarm did not care about sacred things. Elder was the oldest of the leaders. She had lived for 400 years and remembered a time when the galaxy had seemed kind. When the swarm's fleet appeared on their sensors, she did what her people had always done. She asked for help. The message went to the Galactic Council, the great alliance of powerful species that claimed to protect the weak. Elder spoke with dignity and hope. She reminded them of the service. She spoke of the 47 million lives on her world. She asked simply for someone to stand beside them. The Council's response came 3 days later. It was written in cold, official language. After careful review, the Council has determined that military intervention in the Velar 7 situation is not strategically viable. Resources cannot be allocated at this time. We express our sympathies for the people and wish them well in their future endeavors. Elder read the message twice. Then she sat alone in her chamber as her glow dimmed with grief. One by one, she contacted the great powers of the galaxy directly. The Empire said they were too far away. The Collective said they could not risk war with the swarm. The Federation simply did not respond. Everyone had an excuse. Everyone had a reason. And every reason meant the same thing: they were not worth saving. As the swarm's shadow fleet entered their system, Elder prepared her people for the end. There would be no escape. They had no warships, no weapons, no way to fight. They had only their history, their memories, and their fading hope that someone somewhere might remember they had existed. 19 light-years away, a human ship called the Horizon's Edge was finishing a routine patrol. Captain Park sat in her command chair, reading reports that bored her. She was 34 years old, with sharp eyes and a calm voice that her crew had learned to trust. She had grown up on Earth in the rebuilt city of the daughter of refugees who had survived the solar wars. Her parents had taught her one lesson above all others: when someone needs help, you help them. You do not ask if it is convenient. You do not calculate the cost. You simply act. The Horizon's Edge was a small frigate built for exploration rather than combat. It carried 200 crew members, 64 combat drones, and enough supplies for a 6-month journey. It was not a warship. It was not meant to fight battles. Lieutenant, the communications officer, suddenly sat up straight at her station. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal. It's weak, but it's repeating on all frequencies." Turned origin. A moon called Velar 7. The signal is from a species called the paused as more data came through. "Captain, they're saying the Dominion swarm is coming. They're asking for help from anyone who can hear them." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew about the Dominion swarm. Everyone knew what happened to worlds that stood in their path. Lieutenant Commander Lee, the tactical officer, pulled up the star charts. Velar 7 is 4 days away at maximum speed. The swarm's advance fleet will arrive there in approximately 16 hours, their main force in 42 hours. "Can we make it in time?" asked. "We can reach them before the main force arrives. But Captain, we're one ship. The swarm brings thousands." Stood and walked to the main. The stars stretched out before her, cold and endless. Somewhere out there, 47 million people were waiting to die because nobody thought they were worth saving. "Open a channel to Earth Command," she said. "Tell them what we've found, and set a course for Velar 7 maximum speed." Hesitated. "Captain, our orders are to continue patrol operations. We don't have authorization to." "I'm aware of our orders, Lieutenant." His voice was steady. "I'm also aware that 47 million lives don't have time to wait for authorization. We're going." She returned to her chair as the ship turned toward Velar 7. Around her, her crew exchanged nervous glances. They were explorers, scientists, engineers. They had not signed up for war. But they had signed up to serve under Park, and she had never let them down before. As the horizon's edge jumped to faster-than-light speed, stared at the stars and made herself a promise. The galaxy had turned its back on the humanity would not. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The response from Earth Command arrived 6 hours into their journey. Captain Park read it on her personal screen, alone in her quarters. The words were clear and direct. "Do not engage hostile forces. Observe and report only. Intervention in Galactic Council-designated zones is prohibited without authorization. Confirm receipt and compliance." She read the message 3 times, then she deleted it. When the horizon's edge dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Velar 7, the sight that greeted them was beautiful and heartbreaking. The ocean moon glowed soft blue-green against the darkness of space. Crystal formations caught the light of the distant sun and sparkled like diamonds. It was a world of peace, of quiet beauty, of gentle people who had never harmed anyone. And hanging at the edge of the system, visible on long-range sensors, was the Swarm's advance fleet. 47 ships, black and angular, moving slowly toward their prey. "The main Swarm force is still 38 hours away," reported Lee from the tactical station. "The advance fleet will reach weapons range in approximately 10 hours. Nodded. "Open a channel to the surface. I want to speak with whoever is in charge down there." The face that appeared on there was old and tired. Elder's glow had faded to almost nothing. Her large eyes, once bright with wisdom, now held only exhaustion and acceptance. "Human vessel," she said, "you should not have come. There is nothing you can do here. Please save yourselves. There is no need for more death." Leaned forward in her chair. "Elder, my name is Park. I command this ship and I have 200 people who disagree with you. We're not leaving." The elder stared at her. "You are one ship, the Swarm has thousands. This is not bravery, this is suicide." "Maybe," admitted. "But where I come from we have a saying. We don't leave people behind. Not ever. Now I need you to tell me everything about your moon. Defense systems, evacuation routes, underground shelters. Anything that might help us survive long enough for reinforcements to arrive." "Reinforcements," the elder's voice was bitter. "The Council has abandoned us. No one is coming." Smiled, though her eyes were hard. "The Council isn't the only power in this galaxy. Earth's fleet is 19 days away, but I've sent word. And I've sent word to others too. You'd be surprised how many people don't like being told who they're allowed to help." For a long moment the elder said nothing. Then slowly her glow began to brighten just a little. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Captain Park. I've been called both. Now can we get to work?" The next 10 hours were chaos. Doctor, the ship's chief science officer, led a team to the surface to study the crystal caves. She discovered something remarkable. The crystals resonated at a specific frequency, one that interfered with electronic communication. If they could amplify that frequency, they might be able to disrupt the Swarm's ability to coordinate. "The Swarm operates as a hive mind," explained to Via Communicator. "Billions of individual creatures, but they share one consciousness. If we can break that connection, even temporarily, they become confused, disorganized, vulnerable." "How long would you need to build an amplifier?" "With help, Maybe 30 hours, maybe more. We don't have 30 hours, we have 10. Was quiet for a moment, then we need to buy more time. While worked on the surface, Lee turned the space around Velar 7 into a death trap. The horizon's edge carried mining charges for asteroid exploration. He them as orbital mines, scattering them along the routes the swarm would have to take. He hacked into this ancient communications satellites and turned them into jamming stations. Lieutenant worked on a different problem, had given her a special mission, send a message to the entire galaxy, not to governments or councils but to everyone, every ship, every station, every species with a receiver. Crafted the message carefully. She included footage of the council's rejection. She showed the swarm's approach. She showed the horizon's edge, one small human ship holding position between monsters and innocents. The message ended with Captain's voice, calm and clear. This is Captain Park of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge. The Galactic Council has abandoned the people. 47 million lives have been declared acceptable losses. We do not accept this. Humanity does not abandon the helpless. We do not look away from suffering. We stand with and we ask the galaxy, who else will stand with us? Sent the message on every frequency she could reach. Then she sat back and waited. For hours there was nothing. Silence from the stars. Began to wonder if she had been foolish after all, if humanity truly stood alone in its madness. Then, 8 hours before the advance fleet arrived, a ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It was a cargo vessel, old and battered, held together by patches and prayers. Its captain was unnamed, a merchant whose own people had been abandoned by the council a century before. I heard your message, transmitted. I have no weapons, but I have cargo space. I can carry children to safety. Before could respond, another ship arrived, then another, then 5 more. By the time the swarm's advance scouts entered weapons range, 42 vessels had gathered around Velar 7. They were not warships. They were merchants, explorers, refugees, and one ancient battlecruiser crewed by veterans who had been told their war was over. They had come because one human captain had asked a question the galaxy could not ignore. Who else will stand? The volunteer fleet was not an army. It was a collection of desperate hope. Captain Park looked at the ships gathered around Velar 7 and felt something between pride and terror. Cargo vessels with armor plates welded to their hulls, passenger liners with mining lasers attached to their bows, a hospital ship whose crew had voted to stay and help the wounded, an old battlecruiser called the Iron Memory, crewed by soldiers from 6 different species who had grown tired of retirement. None of them had been ordered to come. None of them would receive medals or rewards. They had simply heard its message and decided that some things mattered more than safety. The merchant became the unofficial coordinator of evacuations. His ship, the Wandering Star, had no weapons, but it had room for 3,000 passengers. He organized the other cargo vessels into a relay system, carrying civilians to a safe station 12 hours away. The children go first, Elder insisted. Then the elderly, then anyone who cannot fight. Agreed without argument. He had seen his own people abandoned once. He understood what it meant to save even a few. On the surface of Velar 7, Doctor worked without sleep. The crystal amplifier was taking shape, a massive structure built from ancient technology and human engineering. Scientists worked beside her, their soft glow lighting the crystal caves as they connected circuits and calibrated frequencies. The theory is sound, reported to. When we activate this, it will broadcast a disruption signal across the entire system. Every swarm creature within range will lose its connection to the hive mind. They'll become individuals instead of a collective. And individuals can be scared, said. Exactly. The swarm has never fought alone, they don't know how. But the amplifier needed time. 30 hours minimum, and they had less than 8 before the advance fleet arrived. The waiting was the hardest part. Lieutenant Lee spent those hours preparing battle plans with the volunteer captains. The strategy was simple because it had to be. They could not win a direct fight. They could only slow the swarm down, buy time for the amplifier and the evacuations. "We fight in waves," explained over the fleet-wide channel. "First wave engages the scouts and draws their attention. Second wave protects the evacuation ships. Third wave guards the orbital approaches. Nobody plays hero. Nobody throws their life away. Our job is to survive long enough to make a difference." The captain of the Iron Memory, an old warrior named Admiral Bora, laughed at this. "Lieutenant, with respect, we are 42 ships against the Dominion swarm. We are already heroes. Whether we survive is another matter." On the horizon's edge, continued monitoring communications. The response to her message had spread beyond her expectations. News networks across the galaxy were broadcasting footage of the volunteer fleet. Opinion was divided. Some called them brave, others called them fools, but everyone was watching. "Captain," reported, "I'm receiving transmission requests from 17 different species. They want interviews. They want to know why we're doing this." Shook her head. "Tell them we're busy. They can watch and judge later. Right now we have work to do." But the attention was already having an effect. In the Galactic Council chambers, delegates were asking uncomfortable questions. Why had the Council abandoned the? Why had it taken humans to respond? What did it mean that merchants and refugees were braver than governments? The Council had no good answers. 6 hours before the advance fleet arrived, another ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. This one was different. It was a Council diplomatic vessel, sleek and white, broadcasting official codes. "Unidentified fleet," the transmission began. "You are operating in violation of Galactic Council Resolution 7742. Unauthorized military action in designated zones is prohibited. Stand down immediately or face sanctions." Took the call herself. The face on her screen belonged to an official, tall and gray-skinned, with an expression of practiced disapproval. "Captain Park," the official said, "you are creating a diplomatic incident. Earth will face consequences for this action." "Earth will survive consequences," replied. "Can the same be said for the 47 million people you abandoned?" The Council made a strategic decision based on available resources. The Council made a cowardly decision based on convenience. You decided they weren't worth saving because they had nothing to offer you. You were wrong. His voice hardened. "Now you can either help us or get out of the way, but you will not stop us." The official stared at her for a long moment. Then he ended the transmission without another word. Watched him go with satisfaction. "That was probably not diplomatic, Captain." "Probably not," agreed, "but it was honest." As the hours counted down, the evacuation continued. Its relay system carried thousands to safety. Not all of them would make it out. There wasn't enough time, weren't enough ships, but every life saved was a victory. Elder came aboard the horizon's edge to thank personally. Her glow had returned, brighter than it had been in weeks. "You have given my people something more valuable than rescue," the Elder said. "You have given us hope. Whatever happens next, we will remember this. We will remember that when the galaxy turned away, humanity stood with us." Took the Elder's hand. "Then let's make sure there are enough of us left to remember together." On the sensors, the swarm's advance fleet crossed into weapons range. The battle for Velar 7 had begun. The first swarm ships died in silence. Lee's orbital mines detonated in perfect sequence, tearing through the advanced scouts before they could react. 7 enemy vessels broke apart in bright explosions. The jamming satellites scrambled their communications, preventing them from warning the fleet behind. But the swarm adapted quickly. They always did. The remaining 40 ships spread into a wide formation, probing for weaknesses, testing the defenses. When they found gaps in the minefield, They poured through like water through broken stone. "First wave, engage," Admiral Bora commanded from the iron memory. 12 volunteer ships surged forward to meet the enemy. They were, and they knew it. Their job was not to win. Their job was to buy time. On the horizon's edge, watched the battle unfold with tight-lipped concentration. Her ship held position near Velar 7, coordinating the defense, directing drone squadrons to wherever they were needed most. Every minute they held was another minute for the evacuations, another minute for amplifier. "Status on the surface?" she asked. Checked her console. "Doctor reports the amplifier is at 60% completion. She needs at least 20 more hours." 20 hours. The main swarm force would arrive in 30. If they could hold the advance fleet, if they could keep the enemy away from the moon long enough, they might actually survive this. The first wave fought with desperate courage. The iron memory led the charge, its ancient weapons still powerful enough to crack swarm hulls. Cargo ships rammed enemy scouts, their crews ejecting in escape pods at the last moment. A passenger liner called the Bright Hope used its engines as weapons, burning through 3 swarm ships before taking critical damage. But the swarm kept coming. For every ship they destroyed, 2 more pushed forward. "Second wave, protect the evacuation corridor," ordered. "Third wave, prepare to intercept." Wandering Star was loading its final passengers when a swarm fighter broke through the defensive line. The small, deadly craft dove toward the cargo ship, weapons charging. Didn't hesitate. He had no weapons, but he had a ship built for hauling heavy cargo. He turned the Wandering Star directly into the fighter's path and accelerated. The collision was brutal. The fighter shattered against the cargo ship's reinforced hull. The Wandering Star spun wildly, alarms screaming, hull breached in 3 places, but it held together, and 3,000 children in its cargo hold remained safe. "Get those people out of here," transmitted, his voice strained with pain. "We'll hold as long as we can." The evacuation ships jumped to safety. The Wandering Star, crippled but alive, limped toward the rear lines. On the surface, felt the ground shake as debris fell from orbit. The crystal caves protected her team, but she could hear the distant thunder of battle above. "How much longer?" asked a young scientist named, her glow flickering with fear. 10 hours if we're lucky, replied. "Keep working. Don't think about what's happening up there. Just focus on the task." But focusing was getting harder. The amplifier's power systems were unstable. The crystals needed precise alignment, and every explosion above reminded them that time was running out. In space, the volunteer fleet was dying. 8 ships lost in the first 3 hours, then 12. The Bright Hope finally broke apart, its crews scattered in escape pods across the battlefield. A medical frigate took a direct hit while trying to rescue survivors. Admiral Bora's iron memory was surrounded by 4 swarm vessels. The old battlecruiser fought like a cornered wolf, spinning and firing in all directions, refusing to fall. "Admiral, withdraw," transmitted. "You're taking too much damage." "Withdraw to where, Captain?" Bora laughed, a harsh sound. "This is our stand. This is what we came for. The will remember us. That's enough." The iron memory destroyed 2 more swarm ships before its reactor finally failed. Admiral Bora's last transmission was a war song, ancient and proud, cut short by static. Closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them and made a decision. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions around Velar 7. I'm taking the horizon's edge into the enemy formation." "Captain, that's suicide," protested. "It's a distraction. They'll focus on us and you'll have time to regroup." She stood from her chair. "I'm taking the drone squadron with me. We'll hit them hard, draw their attention, then break for the moon's atmosphere. The crystals might give us cover." "Might," repeated, "Captain." "That's an order, Lieutenant. Hold the line until the amplifier is ready, whatever it takes." The horizon's edge broke formation and dove into the heart of the swarm fleet. Piloted personally, her hands steady on the controls. 64 drones flew beside her, a cloud of steel and fire cutting through enemy ships. She was not a warrior. She had never been trained for this. But she had something the swarm did not, a reason to fight that went beyond hunger and conquest. The swarm turned to pursue her, dozens of ships breaking off their attack to chase this human who dared challenge them directly. Behind her, the volunteer fleet regrouped. The evacuation ships escaped. The defensive line held. Doctor transmitted as enemy fire lit up her shields. How much longer? 12 hours, Captain. I'm sorry I can't go faster. Then I'll give you 12 hours. She dove toward Velar 7's atmosphere, the swarm following. The crystal caves below were waiting, and somewhere in those caves, humanity's last hope was taking shape. Park would give it every second she could buy. The amplifier activated with a sound like singing. Deep in the crystal caves of Velar 7, Doctor pressed the final switch and watched as 3,000 years of history became a weapon. The crystals resonated together, their natural frequency amplified 1,000,000 times, broadcasting across the entire system. Above in the burning sky, the effect was immediate. The swarm had always moved as one. Billions of minds connected, thinking together, hunting together, killing together. They had never known what it meant to be alone. Now they learned. The disruption signal tore through their hive mind like a scream. Swarm ships that had moved in perfect formation suddenly scattered in confusion. Creatures that had known exactly what to do hesitated, uncertain, afraid. The collective intelligence that had made them unstoppable fragmented into millions of individual terrors. Park, hiding in Velar 7's upper atmosphere with her battered ship and surviving drones, watched the enemy fleet fall apart. All ships, she transmitted, her voice rough with exhaustion, the swarm is disorganized. Press the attack. Drive them out of this system. The volunteer fleet obeyed. 23 ships remained from the original 42, most of them damaged, all of them running low on weapons and fuel. But they had something the swarm no longer possessed: unity. The battle became a hunt. Confused swarm vessels fled in random directions, unable to coordinate, unable to fight effectively. Some crashed into each other. Some drifted helplessly until volunteer ships destroyed them. Some simply stopped moving, their crews overwhelmed by the sudden silence in their minds. When the main swarm force arrived 8 hours later, they found their advance fleet destroyed, and a disruption signal that turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. For the first time in their history, the Dominion swarm retreated. Velar 7 had survived. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. A single human ship had 42 volunteers against one of the most feared forces in known space. They had protected a species the Galactic Council had abandoned. They had proven that courage was more powerful than calculation. The aftermath was complicated. The Galactic Council summoned Earth's ambassador, Representative Moon, to answer for humanity's unauthorized intervention. The chamber was full when he arrived, delegates from 100 species watching to see how the humans would respond. The charges were serious: violation of council protocols, interference in sovereign territory, incitement of civil unrest. The delegate read them with satisfaction, confident that Earth would finally be put in its place. When the charges were finished, Moon rose to speak. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes, a diplomat who had spent 30 years learning when to bow and when to stand firm. This was a time to stand firm. "You call our actions unauthorized," he said. "We call them necessary. You speak of protocols and procedures. We speak of 47 million lives. You accuse us of incitement. We ask, what kind of galaxy requires incitement to protect the innocent?" He paused, looking around the chamber. "They served this council for 3,000 years. They kept your histories, your secrets, your memories. When they asked for help, you calculated the cost and found it too high. You decided they were acceptable losses. His voice hardened. Humanity does not accept such losses. We never have. We never will. The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates shouted in anger. Others sat in uncomfortable silence. But 12 species rose from their seats and walked to stand beside the human ambassador. "We support Earth's position," announced the delegate. "The Council failed, humanity did not." The session ended without resolution. But something had changed. The galaxy had seen what was possible when someone refused to look away from suffering. The Council's authority, already fragile, had cracked. On Earth, Captain Park expected court-martial. She had disobeyed direct orders. She had started a diplomatic crisis. By any reasonable measure, her career was over. Instead, she found crowds waiting for her when her ship reached home. The streets of New Seoul were filled with people holding signs, waving flags, chanting her name. They had watched the battle on their screens. They had seen the volunteer fleet hold the line. They understood what she had done and why. Walked through the crowds in a daze, accepting handshakes and embraces from strangers. She did not feel like a hero. She felt tired and sad and grateful to be alive. They sent their own message. They had spent 3,000 years recording other species' histories. Now they would record their own story, and it would begin with the humans who had refused to let them die. On Velar 7, they built a memorial beside the Crystal Caves. It listed the names of every ship and every person who had fought in the battle. Human names. 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 Names from a dozen species who had answered a simple question: who else will stand? At the center of the memorial, carved in 100 languages, were words that Elder had chosen herself. When the galaxy forsook us, strangers became family. Humanity taught the stars what courage means. 6 months later, the Velar Compact was formed. It was a mutual defense alliance of species who had been abandoned, forgotten, or dismissed by the great powers. There were founding members. So were the whose own tragedy a century before had never been answered. So were a dozen smaller species who had learned that the Council's protection meant nothing. At the first assembly, Elder addressed the delegates. Her glow had fully returned, bright and warm as a summer sky. "We were historians," she said. "We believed our purpose was to remember the past, but humans showed us a greater truth. The purpose of memory is to change the future. We remember abandonment so we may choose solidarity. We remember fear so we may choose courage." She turned to where Captain Park sat among the human delegation. Looked different now. She had been promoted to admiral. She had been given command of Earth's fleet. But her eyes were the same, sharp, calm, and kind. "You asked the galaxy a question," Elder said. "Who else will stand? Today we answer." She gestured to the assembled delegates, representatives of species who had been forsaken and forgotten, now united by a single act of human courage. "All of us," she declared, "always." The chamber rose in applause, and somewhere in the stars, the memory of 42 ships holding the line against darkness became legend. Humanity had asked who would stand with the forsaken. The galaxy had finally answered.